first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. And it was your birthday, was it last week?
On the 14th, the day of the
14th.
premiere.
Okay, all
So,
right.
yeah.
Well, happy birthday, belated birthday. Did you do anything fun for your birthday or anything, or the premiere was it?
Yes, I had a party.
All
I had a
right.
premiere and birthday party. What, are you kidding? I mean, how often does that happen?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I had a big party. It was awesome.
All right. So talk about a little bit about like your background, your early life, where you grew up. I think it was Edmonton, Canada, right? And like,
Yeah.
where did you go to school? What was your family like? All of that.
Well, yeah, I grew up in Edmonton, Alberta, which is, a pretty big town, actually, very cultural hub. And my father was the manager of the Jubilee Auditorium, which is a big concert hall in Edmonton. It was like the place where the symphony was and the ballet and all the touring bands used to come in town. And my mom was a nurse. And my dad was also a theater director and a theater maker, and he was the artistic director of a amateur theater. So I spent a lot of my childhood in theater, whether I was behind the scenes or backstage or, at one of the many, many cast parties that my dad threw at the house. Um, so I was kind of always surrounded by artists from like just a very young age, and I think it was very clear from the very beginning that I was going to be an artist. It took me a while to figure it out though, and I didn't go into actual theater school until I was in my early 20s. Um, I didn't. I decided to just bum around for a while and figure out who I was before I went back to school. But then I went to theater school. I went to a musical theater program actually at Grant MacEwan College, which is now a university, and graduated and started working in theater and was working in theater pretty much primarily and all the way up until I really moved to Toronto, Ontario, which was in 1995, a long, long time ago. I moved here to do a play promptly got canceled on my arrival. But I stayed and I did a season at Stratford and I did a bunch of other theater and then just happened to land my first job as in film and television. It happened to be a regular character in a series, which was an amazing first job. And actually, I did one little job before that, which was on Dick, which was the Richard Nixon movie. And I played believe it or not, the Washington Post receptionist.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
Another character
That,
from Washington. Yeah,
that was a
crazy.
great movie and one of the classics. One of the classics for sure. Yeah.
Right? Like, really, it's a really great movie. Yeah, and I had I remember that audition too. It was really fun. Anyway, yeah, and I ended up just starting to work in series television, pretty much exclusively American television right from the beginning. And I was very lucky. I had a number of series for years. And then at about 40, it all kind of dried up as it does for women in their 40s. And I stopped working. And so I decided rather than get bitter and upset with the lot in the way that the patriarchy works, I decided to quit for a while. So I quit and I became a painter. I went back to school and I learned how to paint. And I actually had no intention of coming back. I was happy being a painter with my really short hair and never having to wear makeup. And then a friend of mine out of the blue asked me to read his play, and I did. And I thought, and this was in 2018, right before the pandemic. And I thought, oh, this is a really good play. Maybe I should act again. And then I ended up doing that play, and it changed my life. That play, it was such an incredible experience, and I got sucked right back in. But even after doing that play, I wasn't sure if I wanted to start acting again. And so it took me another year till 2019 till I found an agent and said, listen, I'm not going to dye my hair. I'm not going to do any of the things that people think women should do when they're in their 50s. And I'm just going to be me. And, and it's been great ever since. I don't know. I don't know what happened,
Well,
but people like it, I guess.
yeah, you mentioned so right before the pandemic is when you got into it. Well, 2018. But that was a couple of years before it. So then once you kind of went full time into it, and got an agent, manager, that sort of thing. And then like the world shut down, and then it was like, all right, production shut down. So now we're just running content that we have. So did you at that point think, oh man, did I make the wrong decision at the wrong time, or were you still confident in that
Well,
decision?
I was actually quite lucky. I was shooting a show during the pandemic. It was called Why the Last Man. And so I was one of the very fortunate people that I was going to work every day, or every other day. And so I was quite lucky. I was also shooting a British television show um, that that was, after that. So, yeah, I was actually working during the pandemic, and so I was fairly lucky. Obviously, I didn't work down the whole pandemic because we were shut down considerably for a while there. But yeah, I was lucky enough to book a show towards the end of it, and on that show, yeah, that was a crazy experience shooting in the pandemic. That was
I can imagine.
testing every day and masks everywhere. It was weird. It was like, working in an apocalypse
Yeah.
on a show about an apocalypse. It was it was a bit meta.
Great timing for it, right? Living in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
In your childhood, was it easy having your father in that industry? And your family like being on board early on and saying, "Yeah, I want to get into acting." Okay, that's great. Because I feel like I've talked to a lot of like actors and actresses, and they're like, "Yeah, my parents were not for this at all." They're like, "Go to college, get like an
Right.
actual job, and that's something you want to do on the side, but don't go like full force into this."
I don't think there was any question that I was going to be an artist, even from being little. I think my parents knew that that's where I was going. I don't think there was any guessing. I mean, if I wasn't uh, building plays or musicals in the backyard, I was drawing, So I was or I was singing. I was in a choir for years and years and years. So yeah, I was always doing some sort of art. I was in God, I always forget this. I was a dancer too for years too. I'm not a dancer now. I'm actually terrible at dancing. But when I was a kid, at some point, it worked out. Um, but yeah, I was always in the arts. Like it was not even a question that I would do anything other than that. Parents were incredibly supportive and just expected that that's what I was going to do with my life, to be honest.
And did you have any like early inspirations growing up, like people that you looked up to or that you wanted to like grow up to be, whether it was, acting or singing or even painting, which you eventually got into?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think in terms of theater, I was constantly surrounded by amazing actors and actresses who inspired me all the time. And they were, including my father, who was incredible. So I was constantly being fed it by the theater community. But I was also, film and television was so strong. I mean, I was a huge Sigourney Weaver fan and love Jodie Foster, like love Jodie Foster. Still love Jodie Foster. Um, uh, like, I mean, what's not to love? And I love that she was also directing. Little Man Tate was like one of my favorite movies for a really, really long time. Um, but there was also some really cool Canadians, that were making some really great stuff, and I had a lot of respect and admiration for some Canadian artists as well. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I was constantly being inspired by tons of people all the time.
Yeah, yeah. All right, I want to talk about your new show, Cross, now streaming on Amazon Prime, where you play Chief Anderson alongside Aldous Hodge. So, what drew you to that role? And talk about the show a little
I
bit.
mean, Anderson is incredibly powerful, very ambitious, um, really exciting character. She's You know, you get to be everything that you want, you think you could be, everything that, all the things that you think you want to say and you don't say. Yeah, Anderson gets to say that stuff because she's the big boss. There's nobody higher than her on the food chain. And so she doesn't need to have a filter. Even though she probably has a bit of a political filter. But I think that Cross pushes her buttons and pushes her to a point sometimes where she loses it a little bit.
Uh, yeah, it's interesting. I did watch the first episode, and it's like when you mentioned something about like why are the lights so low, and then who is it says like, oh, I have migraines, and you're like, what? Why does it need to be so
Yeah,
low?
yeah,
I feel like there's like
yeah.
certain lines like within the script itself where it's like that's interesting to throw that in as part of the dialogue, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think she's a character. Chiefs of police, female chiefs of police are almost like unicorns, right? I mean, they're really rare, and the number of sacrifices that they have to make along the way to get to where they are, there has to be some sort of, there's some trauma there, and I think that for Anderson, I think she has, once you get further along in the series, you'll see she has ambitions for herself that go beyond being the chief of police. And and so I think those play into some of the decisions that she makes along the way, and the worries and fears that she has about Frost blowing this up and making it into a huge deal that could have significant consequences for her and her career. And I think that that's a really important thing to remember, is that, when you're that high up there, she is the fall guy. She is the one who would take the blame if the whole thing went sideways, and she knows it. And so she's trying desperately to maintain some sort of control over Cross, which is, come on, let's face it, impossible. He's a terrible rule breaker, and he doesn't causes all kinds of problems.
It's when you prepare for a role like this, how do you do it? Is it like you shadow an actual police chief? Do you read about like what their actual like career is like and that sort of thing?
Yeah, yeah, you do a lot of research. I mean, I think, it was really important to research as many female chiefs as I could and just kind of see that their paths are all different, that there really isn't one way to become a chief, and certainly not if you're a woman. And so it was really interesting to see the different career paths for those incredible women who've managed to pursue and become chiefs in America. I think I also spent a lot of time talking to Ben Watkins, our showrunner, about Chief Anderson and what his vision for her was. She doesn't appear in any of the books. She's kind of I would think, an amalgamation of many of the characters in the books who play the chiefs of police in the books. And I think, that's a great update to this series, I think, is that there's a lot more female characters, and certainly Cross is surrounded by very powerful women who have opinions about stuff. And so, uh, so it was really just the research was about trying to get on the same page as Ben in terms of what he wanted for this character and what he needed to do in order to push Cross in the directions that he goes.
Okay, and you mentioned that you've worked on theater and stage, and obviously the screen. So, um, is there a lot of similarities between the two? And do you have a preference to one or the other, or you do enjoy both equally?
Well, I think in terms of acting, they're the same. I don't use any different muscle or any different skill sets. I mean, there's some technical things that you use that are different, but I think the largest difference is going in order. In a play, you get to do the character from beginning to end in order, and there's something quite fulfilling and gives you a kind of closure when you do a character like that. In film and television, we shoot out a sequence, and so it's sometimes, and, for example, when we were doing Cross, we would never know what was next. So we would, read an episode together, then we'd shoot that episode, and then we'd come together and read the next episode and shoot that episode. So none of us knew where we were going. We were just on for the ride, and we would go where Ben would tell us to go. But in a play, an actor has much more control over the arc of the character and the journey of the character, because you know the whole story and you're supposed to perform the whole story in one night. And there's something very fulfilling about that as a character, as an actor. The other thing too about film and television is that, I'm not an editor, so I ultimately don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what scenes are going to make it. I don't know what lines are going to make it. And I ultimately have no control over that. Whereas an actor in theater, you have a lot more control over how you look, how you appear, all the ways that the show gets crafted together to become part of a whole. You have much more control and much more say in that than you do in film and television.
So
those are the really big differences.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess I never thought of that. So you shoot essentially one episode at a time and get the script for that episode at a time. How long does the whole series take to shoot?
We actually shot 2 episodes at a time.
Okay.
And you're sort of block shooting. So you shoot different sequences. So let's say, for example, we had a number of scenes in the Metro PD, in that great big, so we would shoot all the scenes that were in the Metro PD sort of on 2 or 3 days, whether they were in episode 1 or episode 2. And then you would, it would take about, I can't even remember, it was like 3.5 weeks to shoot both episodes. And then you would start again, and then you would do episode 3 and 4. And then you would just keep going along until you'd finished your 4 blocks and shot your 8 episodes.
Okay, I always find that interesting, the science behind, shooting the show and how long it takes and the production and all of that. It's always interesting to learn.
Yeah. Every show is different. The show that I shoot in England called Mallory Towers, we block shoot 20 episodes at once.
Oh my gosh.
It's a little discombobulating, I'll tell you. If you're on a day like I've had a few days where I'm in every scene, but I could be shooting episode 1, episode 13, episode 17, episode 6, episode 10, it gets a little you have to be very prepared in order to shoot.
I can imagine.
Because you really need to know everything. You need to know all your lines. You need to come to work prepared.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work.
So when you shoot, most of the time it's on location, and you essentially move to that location and live there for however many months it takes to shoot?
Yeah.
Like that one?
Yeah. That is the short answer. Like, I spent the last 2.5, like my whole summer this summer was shooting Cross and Mallory Towers. And Mallory Towers shoots in England. So I would go and I would live in Devon, which is a really small little town of about 3.5, 4 hours outside of London, for 3.5 weeks. And then I would come home and I would shoot Cross for 3.5 weeks. And then I would go back to Devon and I'd shoot. Yeah, it was a back and forth. Every 3 or 4 weeks, I would be going back and forth for like 3 months.
Is that common to shoot 2 things at once? And did you find that difficult, like having to transition from one character to the other in each show? And was there ever like, wait, okay, which character am I in again? Or is there like, a window where you can prepare and get into that role again?
Well, I'm very lucky in the fact that no, that is not common, that people are shooting 2 things at once. I was extremely lucky and fortunate to have both of these shows going for me this year, and that it worked out. That that often you can't do one. That happened to me once before, where I had to say no to another show because I was working on another show, and the schedules couldn't work out. But Yeah, I think it's one of the lucky things about the business. Sometimes when you're working, you get more work, which is great. Uh, but in terms of the character part, I mean, the characters, these particular characters, Miss Grayling, which is the character I play in Mallory Towers, is a headmistress of a 1950s boarding school. So she's very different than Chief Anderson here in 2023, right?
Yeah.
2024. She's just a very, very different character. And so, and she's also British, which is helps a lot. Accents are really easy way to differentiate character pretty quickly. And so, no, I didn't have any problem flipping back and forth, but I would say it was really fun to play them both at the same time because, you know, if you could get two sides of a coin, I would say they were both the other side of the coin for each other,
Yeah,
you know,
and
really
it's
interesting
probably a
characters.
super like interesting challenge as an actor too, I would imagine in your career.
Yeah. I think it's mostly the prep that's the hardest, you know, because you really do have to be on top of it. And because production, it costs a lot of money to make these shows. And so they hire me to do my job. And if I have to go to set prepared to do that quickly. And so when you have a lot going on, that can be the biggest challenge is staying on top of all the lines and making sure you know getting all the things you need in order to do your job. So that can be a little challenging when you have multiple things going at once. But you get help. You pay for help. I paid people to run lines with me because I just needed it. You know.
I guess, you know, the things you'll do to have perfection, but it obviously pays off, you know, in the long end, and these series look great. So, yeah, so I'm sure the
Yeah,
reward is well
it sure
worth it.
does.
Yeah.
It
And
is.
you've
Yeah.
taught acting and visual art at prestigious institutions. So is there something that you tell your students that you wish you kind of knew when you were first starting out in the industry?
Oh yeah, for sure. You know, there are so many things I tell them, but I think the thing that I say to most of my students, whether they be actors or visual artists, is to just follow their guts. You know, that they're gonna, as an artist, you have to learn to listen to yourself, and the quicker and faster that you learn to listen, the better an artist you're going to be. And so I really encourage young people to just follow their guts, follow their heart, their artist's heart, and listen to what it's telling you to do and telling you which path to follow. Uh, it's a difficult business, you know, and you have to develop a bit of a thick skin, but you also have to keep working at it. And you know, the thing about being an artist is that you can never be a master, really. Like that doesn't you can have a lot of experience, accumulated experience, but you never actually can master the craft. It's just not how it works. And that's because you are always changing as a person. And so you have to relearn how to do stuff all the time, especially as an actor, how to access emotion or how to respond to things, or it just changes all the time. So always going to acting class. Like I go to acting class every Monday because there's always stuff I'm working on, and I need to keep practicing. And as an artist, I'm also always going to class because it's a really important thing to just keep yourself in it and remind yourself that you're always learning. You always have something to learn. Be humble, be grateful. Yeah, those are the big ones.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I always feel like, you know, if you have what's considered like a job, like at a company or something, you know, it's steady work, but like with acting, it isn't. So is there always like some sort of like I guess self doubt in your career or something between those jobs,
Oh, sure. Oh, my goodness, yes.
the ups and downs and all
God,
that? Yeah.
I quit for 10 years because I couldn't manage it, right? So, I mean, yeah, I think it's incredibly difficult. The thing about the performing arts too, you know, actors, dancers even, well, in some dancers, but mostly actors, it's very difficult to do it by yourself. Um, you require other people in order to practice or do your craft, and so that's a problem. If you can't get people to hire you, or get jobs, or get other people to work with you, that poses a real challenge to you being able to do your craft when you want to do it. And so that's why I always encourage actors to go to class, because they actually need it as an outlet for their artistry. It's not actually about them learning anything. It's about them continuing to remind themselves that they're an actor with other actors. Um, uh, and so, I mean, I think it's because it's a very, very difficult profession to keep yourself, keep the negative voices from keeping you down, you know? And it takes a lot of years of listening to those voices, and then recognizing that they're just a bunch of liars and they're not telling you the truth, for you to overcome them and do it anyway. You know, I say to a lot of students, you know, you feel the fear and you do it anyway, which is, you have to find a way to overcome your own uh, obstacles that you put in your own way. And that's actually the greatest challenge to being an actor, is probably the greatest obstacles you're facing are the ones you put up yourself.
Yeah, I always feel that if you get too comfortable in something, then, you know, you're not challenging yourself and you're not growing and learning, like you said, you know, learning's kind of a lifelong thing. Um,
It has to be. It has to be. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck in something that is not going to help you grow.
yeah. And do you think then taking a step away from acting, those years off and painting, helped? And I also heard you, say in an
Oh,
interview that you have two bachelor's degrees and a master's degree, but you got the
yeah.
second bachelor's and master's later on in life. So, and you
Yeah.
felt that like that education, learning at that, you know, later in life than say, you know, traditionally after high school, college, was better for you
hmm
because I
hmm
think you have a better appreciation for learning and education.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God. There were so many good questions in that little
Yeah,
clump
sorry to
there.
throw all that
Um,
out there.
I mean, yes, I went back to school when I quit acting, and became a painter like Joni Mitchell. And the thing that I learned there was something profoundly significant, which was that the all the training that I had as an actor applied, to me being a painter. That ability to take risks, that ability to listen to myself, that ability to take a chance and feel the fear, do it anyway, all applied to my painting practice, all of it. And so it was also, I was writing at the time too. I just really started writing. And I think what I learned from all the various disciplines that I've explored is that they're all the same. They all come from me. They're all me. I'm just using the different tools to execute them. And I always encourage artists of all stripes to search for other avenues of artistic outlet, because especially if you're an actor, it can be a very lonely profession, and you can get in your head a lot. And so if you have something like writing or painting or drawing, or dance that you can do by yourself, you're going to have an outlet that is controlled by you. And so I think that's incredibly important for artists to remain and define the things that help them express their artistry. Um, because otherwise you can get all bottled up, listening to your own thoughts. Um, and I think school is just, I think whenever I teach, I'm always so excited to see mature students, they're called. Mature students are people over 25. So let's just be clear. But especially when I see mature students who are in their 40s plus, because the level of dedication, the level of commitment they bring to what they're doing is just at a higher level. Like they're there, they've made sacrifices to be there. They are very dedicated. They absolutely 100% finish all their assignments, and then some, and want more. It's because they know that they're there for a reason. And you ask any professor in any university anywhere will tell you that mature students elevate the class because their drive is different than a 19-year-old.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Because they already know who they are.
Yeah, I mean, I think at that age,
they know who they are. They know why they're there.
Yeah. I mean, I think at that age, you're there to actually learn. As someone in my 40s,
Yeah.
I've always thought about going back to get my master's, and I'm like, I think school would be different for me
do
now
it.
doing it. I know, yeah, a lot of people say that, and especially my company will pay for it.
Do
So
it.
I'm like, I've got to. So I've been
What?
thinking about it for the last year.
Your company will pay for it?
Yeah.
What is wrong with you?
Because I feel like even though like I don't want to go back to school, but I feel like it would be different for me now in my mid 40s than it would be in my teens and early 20s when I went for my undergraduate. And because you were there because you have to get your college degree after high school, and then you can do what you want after. But now I feel like if you go back, it's because of you, and I feel like learning would be different for me now because I do like there's a lot of things that I learn now where I'm like, oh, I wish I had learned that in school or remembered that. But I think now I have an appreciation for learning because I learn what I want to learn about certain subjects because I find that interesting and fascinating. Rather than just having to learn these courses because you have to have the checkoff list to get the degree.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And mark my words, you will love it. You will love it.
Right.
It's just it's a completely different thing. And, it's almost like I sometimes, even though it was stressful when I was doing my master's and there was deadlines and all kinds of things that happened.
Right.
There were moments when I would pinch myself and go, is this my life right now? Like, am I really like focused on this one thing and accomplishing this one thing above all others? It was a really great 2 years to really drill down and focus and dedicate myself to something. And I really loved it. And I would do it again. I mean, I might do it again.
Do it.
I might get another master's. I might.
All right.
Because it was a really selfish time. It was really fun to be selfish.
Yeah. All right. Last question. So what's next for you in the pipeline? What's next in, the next year, a couple of years, 5 years from now? What would you like to be doing?
Well, I just finished shooting season 6 of Mallory Towers, so that will be coming out sometime next year. The second half of season 5 just dropped on BBC iPlayer, so that's happening. Of course, I really hope all the fans keep watching Cross and we get picked up for a 3rd season. That would be incredible. And I would love to be doing that. I'm currently working with our union here in Canada, which is ACTRA, to help negotiate our agreement, just like SAG-AFTRA did last year. So we're working on our deal now with the producers. So I'm doing that. And the screenplay that I'm writing, I'm taking to a writing intensive with the Writers Lab, which is an American group of writers for women over 40, female identifying. And so I'll be going into an intensive writing time working on that script. And then it'll be Christmas, and I'll be eating things by the Christmas tree.
And hopefully you have some downtime between Christmas, right? New Year's, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, I love to fill my house with people that I love over the holidays. And so I hope to be doing that. We were away last Christmas. My family went to Victoria. And so this year I'm hoping that we're just going to sit around and have people come over. And that just sounds like heaven to me.
Yeah, it does. It does. Well, you definitely deserve it for sure.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. And the show's Cross. It's on Amazon Prime, streaming now. Thank you again, and best of luck to you and the rest of your career. I look forward to continuing to watch all your shows.
Thank you so much, Larry. I really appreciate it. And go ahead and do that master's.
I will. Yes,
you won't regret it.
I will. I'll let you know. I'll keep you posted.
Okay, do.
Right.
We'll do this again for season 2.
Yes, let's do it. Yeah, let's do it again. All right. Sounds good.
Unless you're in school, and then you shouldn't be doing this.
I'll step out of class for the interview. All right. There's exceptions.
Okay.
I'll make the exception for you.
Okay, great.
All right.
Excellent. Love it.
All right. Thank you so much again. I
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Larry.
All right. Bye.